Quantitative literacy. We are moving along in our curriculum. This is our last week of new material before our second test of the marking period. And what we've been talking about is, financial planning for becoming a teacher and someone in just anyone who graduates college. I was talking to a friend of mine, unfortunately, a really good friend of myself and this other person. Billy, his wife Wanda, passed away, and I went back down to Long Island, where I taught for 33 years, and I hung out with my old teacher friends. And one of my buddies, John, his wife Janet, sounds like some story, right? Janet has worked for several banks in New York City. She's extremely successful, and we were talking about the college classes that I was teaching. And I said, Janet, the other one I'm teaching, which I think is really, really important, and I'm so happy to be teaching it because these are like the lessons that I've learned in my life that could make things so much better. And keep in mind, she has a son that just graduated college and another one who graduates this year. I said, it's a class where a big chunk of the class is spent on financial planning. And she goes, oh my God, that should be required for every single student that goes to college. That's like the most important class you can teach. And I said, I get it. In a lot of ways, I think it is. So that's where we're at now, and that's how important this stuff is. And this is a woman who is very high up. At one point, it was Chase Bank, and I think now it's Citibank, and like she travels all over the country giving presentations for banks. And she once spent, I think, 6 or 8 months in Singapore getting their bank branch in Singapore straightened out. So she's a very successful and powerful woman in banking. Has shattered the glass ceiling, which is something where for years women were not involved in banking. It was like a man-only club. So she's saying this is a super important course, and I'm saying so. And her husband is a teacher. So she also knows a thing or two about teacher incomes and salaries. So as you can see, Ziva's eyes locked on whatever they're locked on in that picture. Hopefully, you have your eyes locked on your future too. This is our 11th lesson. Okay, agenda. Praxis prep as usual, review materials as usual, and then classwork contemplations. So, our praxis prep for today, you know the drill, stop and start. Go ahead. Okay, so remember the rule we introduced with multiplying positives and negatives last week. If you multiply by a negative, you change the sign. If you multiply by a positive, you keep the sign. And the numbers are the numbers. So, product means the answer to multiplication. Remember, the easy way is to just change the sign if you multiply by a negative, multiply or divide. And then if you multiply or divide by a positive, don't change anything. So we're starting with a -2. I multiply by a -1, I have to change the sign to 2. Then I multiply by a +4. 2 times 4 is just 8. I don't change anything. Then times -3. The 8 and the 3 get me to 24. But multiplying by a negative, I better change that sign to a -24. Then multiplying by a 6, I get 144. And multiplying by a negative, I get -144. Okay, there it is. Go ahead. Okay, our typical stop and start retinue. Let's go here. If I solve 3x minus 7 equals 17, adding 7 dividing by 3x is 8. And then I'm going to substitute an 8 for the value of x in 8x plus 21. So 8 times 8 is 64, plus 21 is 85. That's your answer. Next praxis review question. What's the greatest common factor of 50 and 28? Go ahead. Well, do you remember the factors divide into numbers, like the factor trees you used to do in elementary school? The key word there, factor trees. So the factors were always smaller than the number. They were things that divided into the number. So what is the biggest factor, the biggest thing that divides into both 50 and 28? Well, it's going to be 2. Let's say you're not sure of what number divides into both 50 and 28. This is where we're working on our test savvy here. Just try the choices. Obviously, one's never the greatest common factor. If it is, we call them prime, or actually relatively prime. 21 doesn't go into them. 2 works. 7 doesn't go into 50, and 14 doesn't go into 50. So 2 is the correct answer. Don't be afraid to try the choices. Okay, go ahead. This is an old praxis question. I'm going to teach you a little bit of how to break this apart. I really should have also underlined things. It's a really helpful tool when you have a problem like this to underline the important stuff. Budget of $13.25. Expects 26 people. The cost of a room is $270. How much can Annie spend for each person? Those things should have been underlined. I apologize that they weren't. Nor will they be in the next lesson. All right, since the budget is $1,325 and Annie works for a business and not the federal government, she cannot exceed the magic number. The correct symbol must be a less than. That immediately knocks two choices out. It cannot be A or it cannot be B. It's either B or D. And what's the difference between B and D? In B, 26 is being multiplied by X, where X is going to represent each person, the number of people, okay? And the other one's the 270 being multiplied by the number of people. So what should be multiplied by the number of people? 26, because it's $26 each, or I should say there's 26 people each at X dollars that are going to add to the cost. So 26X plus 270 is less than or equal to 1325. Correct answer is B. But I want to talk a little bit about if you get confused about less than and greater than symbols. I used to. And the reason is because sometimes school teaches you stuff that is just inane and it has no basis in anything logical. Therefore, it is difficult to remember because it doesn't make sense. It's just a memory trick. I have heard people talk about alligator mouths, Pac-Man, the letter L, many different things with less than and greater than symbol. As far as I'm concerned, they're all hooey. What they are the less and the greater end of the number line. Look at the symbol here. This is the less end of the number line. Look at the symbol here. It's a greater than symbol. It's the greater end of the number line. Less than symbol, not the whole arrow, just the diagonal parts, and likewise the greater than symbol. So that's where they come from. Mathematicians are not random creatures. There's reasons, logic. Mathematics is the study of logic and reasoning. There's logic and reasoning behind the things that mathematics does. Okay, so that's why I said that A and C were out because those are greater than symbols. B and D were in because they're less than symbols. Which costs or repeats or multiplies? Which cost repeats or multiplies? The room or the people? Well, it's or the cost of a meal. It must be the cost of the meal, so you have 26X. So that makes it choice B. Dun, 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 dun. All right, our last praxis prep question for the day. Okay, so if you remember the percent proportion that we did earlier in the year, percent over 100 equals part over whole, you can do this question that way and you will get the completely correct answer. But I want to show you another way to do it too. This way hinges on the idea of that he makes a commission on his sales, and that's 8% of his sales, and of means to multiply. So I'm going to use that idea to make it a little quicker, not better, not more effective, just a little bit quicker. So if you want to use the proportion, you can do that. And if you want to instead realize it's 8% of 4213, you can do that as well. So Dom earns $285 plus something else each week. That's whatever he gets for the commission. Let's put aside the $285 for now. We'll add it back in later. First, I want to figure out this plus something that he gets for commission. Well, it's going to be 8% of 4213, and of in mathematics means to multiply. Like if I said to you half of 10, that's 5, because a half times 10 is 5, okay? So 0.08, which is the decimal equivalent of 8%, we always convert to a decimal when we're going to multiply, times 4213 is 337.04, and then I add the 285 to the 3704, and I get 622.04. So the important lesson to learn here is a couple of things. First, an alternative way to do percentages is to focus on the word of when it's there, like 8% of the commission. It's not always there. And then use it to figure out part of the problem. And the other thing is that this was a two-step problem. All right, so choice D is the correct answer. That's the last of our praxis review. Let me make a video now.